Hello everyone, this is CM Kosemen again. Now, as you can hear, we're in a more kind of lively, chatty, cafe kind of place because I'm recording straight from the sultry cafes and tavernas of the back alleys of Istanbul. Who knows what you might run into in a corner or two. I don't know. I'm joking. Hope the audio quality isn't so bad because this is going to be a long podcast. Now, obviously, it is the answers to the open question time, which I declared over a week ago almost. And many people watched this video and many people commented and there were many questions and I'm thankful to you all. And so without much ado, here we go with the answers. Now, there are a couple of questions which crop up every now and then, so I'm going to address them before everything else. Whenever you hear a question about Snaiad, all yesterdays or all tomorrows, the following is what you need to know. Snaiad was my online book, let's say, about life on another planet. And I published this project around 2007, and it was in hiatus since between 2009 and 14, and it was resurrected a couple years ago thanks to the efforts of the speculative evolution forum community and certain Mr. Cyrus Tiedishman, aka Blue Anteater. So this Snaiad project had all manner of strange and slightly Freudian creatures running around, and I have a lot of questions about Snaiad, and it I think goes to show how successful this was in getting people's interest. Another project is All Yesterdays, the book I wrote mostly. I did most of the writing, and I did some of the illustrations. John Conway did most of the illustrations and did a little of the writing, and Darren Naish wrote the introduction, and Scott Hartman drew the skeletal drawings. So this is that book, All Yesterdays, and it was our, let's say, catalyst of the new dinosaur renaissance, in which we wanted people to stop looking at dinosaurs as stock movie monsters and to see them more as more bird-like, strange but mundane, fat, insulated, feathered, playful, aberrant animals. We wanted people to see dinosaurs less like Jurassic Park and more like a dog on the corner of the street or a strange bird, And this book was also massively successful. I know most of you listeners already know these, but I have to record these as if this is always my test, as if a sweet friend is listening who doesn't know about these, or my aunt is listening or something, for posterity. So anyways, that was All Yesterdays, our dinosaur book. And then there's All Tomorrows, which was a far earlier, like 2005 ebook I wrote about the future evolution of humanity, and basically it was an excuse for me to derive as many strange human creature sci-fi beings as possible, but it had a sort of story as well, like machine people evolve and enslave people on other planets and then kind of transform them, and then there's another alien species named the Ku, and that's All Yesterdays. So Snaiad, All Tomorrows, Snaiad, All Yesterdays, All Tomorrows. I got a lot of questions about these books, and this was what you needed to know about them. So here we go with the questions. I hope the music isn't really disturbing you. From my test, it was a kind of as if like I'm on some sort of actual radio or something. But here we go. Just SSTS asked, I have a few questions. What is the origin and meaning of the name Nemo Ramjet? I'm relatively new to your art, so I have to yet hear the tale. What are some of your favorite movies, books, shows, comics? And finally, do you do commissions? I'd love to have some of your work. So these are good questions. Nemo Ramjet was the name I used on DeviantArt between 2002 and... the site is still active, but I haven't really used it properly since 2010 or something. It was actually an old internet nickname I picked for another forum way back. And the story is pretty mundane. I was studying in Cornell University at the time, which is a big, accomplished school in the US. And I wanted to find a nickname. So I was in the library and I just saw this kind of aeronautical engineering book, which is like ramjet dynamics and stuff like that. Basically, ramjet is a kind of jet engine that's like a flying stovepipe. You know, it's the most primitive but also the most brutally effective jet engine known. You launch the damn thing, you just ignite some propellant at the back, and it doesn't need any like fans or turbine blades or anything. It just burns as it goes, and it can reach really high speeds to such a level that they're sometimes used in missiles rather than planes, because they're so brutally fast that they're difficult to control. And aside from a few really strange French aircraft back in the 50s, they haven't really been used in any sort of airplane. So that's the name I picked. I guess being a younger dude, I was impressed by the prospect of something that's fast and furious and just going in a straight line all the place kind of thing. Whatever. The name Nemo was a corruption of the name Memo, which is a short version of my first name. So there was Nemo Ramjet. May this name be never revived again. Okay, I'm enjoying some really nice hot chocolate on the side, by the way. But anyways, another question by Just Yes. What are some of your favorite movies, books, shows, comics? This is such a big question that it could be a podcast all of its own. Let's keep it brief and give a few examples. Movies: Alien 1, Aliens, Alien 3, Independence Day, Master and Commander, Far Side of the World, almost anything by David Cronenberg. I don't know, now that you think of it. The Thin Red Line by Terrence Malick. God, I'm old, isn't it? I also like a lot of popular films. I really like the Avengers, the Iron Man films, Ant-Man, what's his name? The obnoxious guy, Deadpool. Yeah, I think that was really good. I also like 2001: A Space Odyssey. One fucking blood-curdling film. I don't know if I really like this film or I'm really scared by it, but it's Fire in the Sky. It's about an alien abduction, and I couldn't really watch it after seeing it for the first time. Look this up, Fire in the Sky. What other films? I could just talk for an hour about my favorite films and never stop. I like documentaries, a lot of them. I mean, one recent one I watched was Raiders, in which basically a group of Gen X dudes, after being disillusioned by the 80s American dream, recreate their ultimate film, which was a shot-by-shot remake of Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark. And they only have the final scene to film, but they haven't been able to film this for 17 years. So it's a nice documentary. Speaking of Spielberg and movies, almost anything by Spielberg, he wrote the book about films, didn't he? Saving Private Ryan, all Indiana Jones films, including the fourth one, Star Wars, including the prequels, which I think are scarily prophetic of certain political developments in the world, and they're just full of quotes to mine. Have I ever told you the story of Atopodentatus the Wise? This kind of stuff. And God, I'll make a favorite movies thing, because I don't want the whole thing to be taken up by movies. Books, again, so many. Darwinia is a science fiction book. Star Maker, Olaf Stapledon. Last and First Man, also by Olaf Stapledon, which is basically the blueprint of all yesterdays. Which others? Gateway by Frederick Paul. Anything by Robert Silverberg. I like a lot of the. I usually read sci-fi or straight up science and history, which doesn't make me quite a literary enthusiast, does it? Alright. So, TV shows and comics. Comics, I'll give you anything by Killian Plunkett, which is an American illustrator, great illustrator. And anything by Simon Roy, who's my friend. And I'm not that much of a comics enthusiast beyond those. TV shows, a lot. And I don't know. Do you really want to go there? It's just the same load of popular stuff that everyone has. House of Cards. What else? Oh, Narcos. What else? That recent thing about O.J. Simpson. I really disliked Game of Thrones. Yeah, I think it's problem, and it became really obvious that it was problem in its last seasons. I used to like Sex and the City. I don't know. Anyways, so those, yeah. And finally, do you do commissions? Asks Justice T. Yes, but if you want hardcore real art, like the kind of spirit art, the painterly art, that's gonna set you back a bit. I mean, the rates for those, I'm afraid, start from $1,000 or so. But if you're thinking about creature illustrations, email me and we'll talk. c.m.kosemen@gmail.com. We'll talk. I'll be willing to do creature art for less. But yeah, because I have this fine art career going to, I have to start the rates from $1,000, I'm afraid. But yeah, bring your offer and we will do a sort of, negotiations. Okay. That was just one question and we're already clocking 13 minutes. Okay. Tylocoleo carnifex, which I don't think is real name because the name belongs to a saber-toothed kind of marsupial animal, which is one of the coolest marsupials ever, asks, "Hey man, I always love your work and it's great to see you back in action." Thank you, man. I would love if you did a video just to update the current status of Snaiad. I know a few years ago you talked about doing a book. I think all of us here would love to know your current progress on that or anything else. Awesome work. Keep it up. Thanks. Here's a Snaiad question again. I told everyone what Snaiad was. Okay, Snaiad book is in the pipeline, but it's a very long, convoluted and somewhat clogged pipeline, and I have one massive book of visual history and visual research. After that is done, it will be Snaiad time, and I think I will end up redrawing all the main clades and add 3 times more animal clades. So it will be a kind of cladistics guide peppered with anecdotes that kind of give a outline of a story. So, there. Please keep your faith on Snaiad and keep watching the skies. I will do it. Okay, Michael Maitland says he's a really close family friend and he is one who's really close to our hearts. And it's great to have you back, man. Thank you, dude. I have two questions. Could you maybe tell us more about the invertebrate phyla of Snaiad? Elastozoans, Trilateralans, Arthrognatans, Mullogiforms. So again, Snaiad. This project contained more than 130, 150 animals. But they were all the equivalents of backboned animals, like a fox, a sloth, a tiger, a lizard, something like this. To fill in the ecological gaps, there's an animal, for example, that feeds on something like ants. But obviously on that planet there are no ants, there are no insects, there are no arthropods. So I made up these minor phyla. And I gave them names, and some of them are even illustrated. So yeah, let's explain those. It will be a good build-up for the actual Snaiad book. Elastozoans. These are basically things like extremely elastic slugs and like cross between a flatfish and an octopus. But they are also primarily terrestrial too. So if you're in a garden in Snaiad, if you turned over a rotting log, you would see these like origami like small animals stretching about and trying to crawl away. And there are also some aquatic elastozoans, and in the tropical forest there's like bigger blanket like things that kind of imagine a fleshy blanket that's crawling slowly on a mossy giant tree trunk, but if you touch it, it changes shape and color suddenly to shock you. So things like this. Trilateralans, the name means three-sided symmetry, and obviously they are descendants of these starfish-like animals that are marine and terrestrial. So there's a huge diversity of them. Some of them have become axialized, which means that they have lost their triple clover leaf type of symmetry and are more like proper insects. And trilateralans have got this kind of jointed legs somehow, so they resemble insects if you have a really stretchy imagination. Arthrognatans. By the way, some of these have bases in actual earth animals. Arthrognatans look like fish from the tail below and a bit like insects from the head up. And obviously that was based on a misinterpretation of a animal in the Burgess Shale in the Cambrian era. 10 points to whoever can guess the name. But they later learned that this animal wasn't actually something like that. But again, on Snaiad, there's a group of animals that have a fish-like backbone, fleshy bodies, but insectile heads. I'll leave it at that. They are the major group of fish-like things in Snaiad's oceans. And Mullogiforms, they're kind of these asymmetrical frog-like things that really, they look like this kind of bag with eyes and tentacles and things, and they're just, I have plans for them, but you will see. So yeah, Michael, these were the minor phyla of Snaiad, and you revealed them to everyone else. Aha. Okay. And he says, you've spoken about some ideas for man-made weapons, but do you have any ideas for extraordinary weapons that might evolve in nature? Yes, very good questions. Guns have evolved in nature, so to speak, and rockets. Certain insects mix chemicals in their butts, and we call them fart bugs here in Turkey, but they're like bombardier beetles actually. So there's a basis for an explosive based weapon. Now, I used to have these ideas about a grub based on an insect like this, and maybe it was genetically engineered or something. So it has these two sacs, grossly extended or full of chemicals. When they mix, there's an explosion. And this is already a situation we have in nature. But these bugs, the sacs are so big, they're like this fleshy maggot thing behind the beetle itself. And the beetle itself has very thick shells and elytra, so it's like a bullet. Now if you place this bug in a tube and crush its butt, the explosion takes place, the beetle's head is launched instantly like a bullet. And obviously there would be a special kind of plant that has a long and very hard tube-like body to accommodate this. So I imagine these like biological bullet maggot things. And then in one of Larry Niven's books, I think, there's something called a stage tree, which is actually a biological rocket that can go up to the orbit. And they were engineered by some master race in the past. So basically this is a plant that accumulates all kinds of hydrocarbons on its body. And when it reaches peak length and you light it on fire, like a gigantic redwood, it just flies up to the orbit. And when it's flying up, it discards stages which actually contain its seeds embedded in the bark. So it's a kind of like planet seeding tree or something. That's a really good idea. So yeah, and also some extraordinary weapons in nature: bubonic plague, Black Death, AIDS, Ebola. You know, I think nature is really deadly with diseases. Nature doesn't play fair when it comes to weapons. In fact, there was a segment like this in the Rama series by Arthur C. Clarke, and there's this interstellar habitat with humans and two other species. Humans are really warlike and nasty because they're an allegory of our species' bad deeds in this book. And there are these octospiders who are these master genetic manipulators. And people go over to the octospider section in one of these books. They begin killing them. The octospider says, look, if you keep this up, there will be a war. Humans are saying, what war? We're killing you already. They're bluffing. Don't say there really will be war. Please stop. And they said, no, we don't care. They said, no, please, we mean it. I said, who cares, lol. And then the next day there's a plague and almost everyone in the human quadrant dies. That's war in nature. Most of what we think is a fair fight and a fair war is basically a derivation of our ape clan battle instincts, which means the main enemy, the main objective, is not to kill or destroy the enemy outright, but that helps in most cases. But the main purpose is to make them lose face and flee. But in nature, wars are to the knife. Okay, that's question 2. Wow, lots of questions. Let's take a little break. It won't register because I'm pausing and I'll start recording again. And we'll be back with question 3. Blues Army. Okay, here we go again. Another question. Number 4. Not 3, as I said mistakenly. From Kelston Humbler, he says, honestly, you have some pretty cool ideas. Perhaps I could use some of these concepts for something. Of course you can. It's probably the snake people, mountain gods, and blowgun dinosaurs. Yes. Cryptozoology theme is interesting too. Obviously, Kelston is asking about the imaginary scenario I wrote for King Kong in one of my earliest videos. I really want to do a Lost World type dinosaur movie, something that hasn't been done before, but I have no idea where I want to go with this. You have any ideas for me? Yes. Read... What was the name? Edgar Rice Burroughs' Land Before Time. Basically, it's set in a kind of Lost World island named Kaspak. But evolution doesn't proceed non-linearly. Evolution doesn't proceed linearly on Kaspak. In fact, in the middle of the island, there's a bubbling lake. And out of these sperm or tadpole-like things come up. And progressively in the lower valleys of the island, these tadpoles evolve into fish, reptiles, or they take sidelines and change into dinosaurs or monkeys or tool using man or spear using man or something. And basically the individual's metal determines what he or she becomes, what kind of animal they end up as. So that's very interesting. A land before time, or the name might be different, but it's from Edgar Rice Burroughs. Look this up. Look also Caspak up. Caspak. Okay. Any good ideas for a dinosaur flick I could use? Something that hasn't been done before? Thanks, says Kelston Humbler. I think I already gave you a slight answer. You could try basically taking a story that's not about dinosaurs. It could be a love story or something, and then immerse that in a world that has dinosaurs, and these animals then could be a kind of background actors in a more sentimental film. Of course, these strategies also have a risk of backfiring horribly, but you might attempt this. Anyways, hope you succeed. If you make this project, I want to see it, Kelston Humbler. More questions, moving on. Oh, okay. Have you seen Rick and Morty? It's an AS, but you can watch it online. It's much more intelligent than it initially lets on. Unfortunately, I haven't. I would like to see it, but I haven't gotten around to seeing it yet. In this last generation, there's lots of these interesting animated shows which I think I should get a look at, but I haven't had the time to see. 3. I thought it was interesting how in All Tomorrows you basically skip over the posthumans' future defeat of the coup. Was there any reasoning behind that? Was it to show the cosmic insignificance of history or something like that? Or something else? Okay, I need to go back to All Tomorrows again. There's these coup type creatures which are like alien conquistadors that sweep around the galaxy like a clock's arm. And whenever they encounter intelligent civilizations, they destroy them and they genetically manipulate their constituent species into strange creatures. And ultimately, they strike humanity once, and humanity gets separated into all these strange species and bizarre creatures. Evolution produces intelligent forms again, and in a long time they defeat these coup in the end. Look, basically the coup was a plot device to come up with all these strange post-human creatures. Nothing more, to be honest. But of course, as I wrote the story, they started having a life of their own, and basically they are a kind of preventative measure against intelligence, because for distant and almost mystical reasons, the forces behind time and galaxy have decided that intelligence is actually a plague and it will destroy planets and galaxies. So the coup's purpose is actually to increase the diversity of life in the galaxy by destroying intelligences and increasing overall species diversity. So that was something arcane like that. And I just wrote their defeat in a sentence or two because it's such a big event that a human-sized viewer couldn't comprehend it, and readers would have all these fantastical ideas about it, which would always be more fun in their own minds than in my book. So there, yeah. Another question by Kelston Humbler. Your idea for an ideal horror movie or monster movie or a Lovecraftian movie? Oh, simple. Mountains of Madness by Lovecraft himself. But it has to be produced with like a $600 million budget by a team of really good filmmakers. And I'm not just talking about effects in here. That's my idea. Read this book. It's all I need to know. All I need to tell you. At the Mountains of Madness, if you haven't read it already. Horror movies. I'm not really a big fan of horror movies. I'm not really big on gore either. I don't like films where characters get killed or there's pain or suffering for no reason. And that's just not my thing. But I did have this fantasy about this kind of strange Lovecraftian monster. Okay, if I sat down to make the most disturbing movie ever, it would be about this, I don't know, dimensional visitor or alien or whatever. And this creature has this kind of vagina-like orifice in its back. And for some reason, it encounters and viciously kills people. But just anybody, you know, like people next door type of really humble folks next door. And the death scenes would be really brutal, but from the vagina in its back it would make all these like embarrassingly frank moaning and sexual sounds, I think. But I would never touch this film. It's disgusting. But if forced to do the most, it would be that. Scenes of death and sounds of orgasms. Anyways. But anyways, I don't like bloody and death-themed movies. Okay, then fifth question by Kelston. Will you ever do a after man take on Earth's future biosphere? I think that would be really cool. Thanks, man. But I would love to do this, but I have other projects in the pipeline now. Most these after Earth futures, there are people who do them much better than I would do. And if you're interested in, please look at sivatarium.ru. That's a Russian site. There's a Russian guy who did this really amazing and detailed future biosphere. And also at the speculative evolution forums, there's a diversity of future Earth scenarios, and all of these are amazing. Kudos to anyone and everyone behind them. So go and see them. Okay. More comments. Joshua Knupp says, well, your videos are certainly more entertaining than mine when we judge from the viewers, so keep up the good work. Thanks. Joshua is a great paleo artist. He's on YouTube too, and he's making these really amazing live drawings of animals, so that's a really kind thing for him to tell this to me. But if you're watching, please go and subscribe to Joshua's channel. That's JOSCHUAKNUPPE. And also check his artwork. He's like a kind of true Germanic paleo art god. And I think just on the day of this recording, he had a page feature in a German newspaper. So congratulations. How do you say that in German? Geil, das ist geil. Yes, that. Okay. Paleo Otaku says, I heard Darren Naish will publish a book about reconstructing dinosaurs. Do you participate? I know of this project. I'm not participating, but I think John Conway is participating. But I don't know anything about the status of this endeavor as of now. You should ask either Darren Naish himself or John Conway. Okay. Man, this is hard. It's like slogging through stuff. More questions from Isaac Gibson this time. 1. Could you explain more about the coup from All Tomorrows? I think I gave the answer to this question before. Do you have a drawing of a red plant animal or a mullogiform from Snaiad? Unfortunately, I don't, but in the future I will. Red plants in my head look actually more like present-day plants on Earth, but the chlorophyll equivalent is red. green plants on Snaiad, and just for information, on the planet of Snaiad there's two types of plants, red and green. Green plants actually have a similar greenish color, but their structures are more alien looking. They look more like magnified succulent plants or strange cacti or ferns or stuff like that. And mulogiforms I also described in a previous question. Daniel Tarsitana says, cool. Seems like someone had similar questions as I did about the Ku and non-illustrated Snaiad life forms. You, sir, have a cult following. Thank you. I'm really honored, and I can't thank you guys enough. I never expected this kind of attention, but I won't deny that I'm happy to have it. It's a small flock, but I hope my work makes everyone here happy. Thanks, Daniel. Again, he asks one more question. The Ku could almost have their own entire history in all tomorrows. I'm happy either way, with them remaining a mystery or learning more about them. Definitely one of the greatest antagonists in your universe. Thank you. And in the previous minutes, I gave more information about the Ku. They were supposed to be a force of nature in the galaxy. There was a book called Engines of God by an author I can't remember. It's a sci-fi book, but in that book there was this kind of galaxy ranging clouds that somehow detected right angles in cities and rained down meteorites on them. So I think it was somehow based on them, the Ku. Okay, another question. Nice guy Nicholas asks, can hominids ever become nocturnal and carnivorous? I'm asking if it's plausible in nature because I'm doing a speculative zoology project inspired by an anime series called Tokyo Ghoul. I don't know this series, Nicholas, sorry. So you want to design nocturnal and carnivorous hominids. This has already been done in the world of science fiction history in the Ringworld series by Larry Niven. And there are ghouls actually who are the specialized nocturnal corpse-eating people on this massive interstellar structure called the Ringworld, which has like 1 billion times the 1 billion times the surface area of Earth or something like that. So Larry Niven already has answered your question. I think people aren't that malleable in those terms. If there were a tribe of people who were nocturnal and ate corpses, they would look just like people. I mean, because we're very flexible with our technology, our social habits, our family groups, our social interactions. These artifacts are so flexible that you really don't need much in the way of phenotypical biological changes to accommodate very different lifestyles. I mean, even historical times, you used to have people specialized in diving, people specialized in horseback riding, people specialized in, I don't know, in Stone Age years, there used to be a tribe who specialized on eating turtles. Yet, the body plan doesn't really change because it's our minds that are flexible and adaptable. So, Larry Niven's ghouls have a different look about them, but in real life, I think if there was a tribe of actual nocturnal people, they would look like people. Because they're corpse eaters, they'd probably be smaller. They'd probably be smaller than regular people to make more of the nutrient resources. But once again, you're looking at something like Bushman tribes from South Africa, not very different, not very ghoul-like at all. That's one thing I'm sure about. Okay, Plastospleen asks Ashley, why in all yesterdays there are almost no non-Mesozoic dinosaurs? Did you have any ideas about pterosaurs, Paleozoic or Cenozoic animals? We did a few with John Conway, but our minds were hooked mostly on theropods, sauropods, and their relatives. We didn't have much on the way of mammals, but I think if one thinks hard enough, there could be an all new, all yesterday's book about prehistoric mammals. And in the companion volume, All Your Yesterdays, Vitor Silva did something about saber-toothed tigers. You know, the whole question about saber-toothed tigers, if the teeth was really exposed like a blade, that's certainly a question worth considering. So there. But I don't know. About pterosaurs, I had an idea of nest parasitism, which another great artist, Jack Kirby, later illustrated, so heads up to that. But yeah, mostly we were about sauropods and theropods in the original All Yesterdays. Moving on. K. McCall says, "Thank you so much for this series. Hearing from you and your spectacular ideas and insight on regular basis is such a gift. As far as questions are concerned, I'd really like to know more about the coup from All Tomorrows." Wow, there's a coup fan club. Please, someone out there, listeners, make a lot of coup fan art and coup fan theories and a coup fan club t-shirt, please. And I would like to purchase one from you. I've talked a lot about the coup before. What was the life cycle like? I didn't really think when making the book. The alien race was depicted as something like a giant dragonfly. And I think it was my idea that this was like a hive mind based on these insectile things, but I really didn't think much about their larvae or something. How they biologically developed, how are they raised, and if they even age. Okay, I think from all that I've said about the coup, it looks like they may not age. They may be more like a swarm of ants, which have no intelligent minds or individuals, but they have a set of very simplified reflexes, which amounts to the same thing. So there, yeah, no training. They just follow some very basic instinctive things. If you see an animal, test if it's intelligent. If it's intelligent, sample. After sampling, kill. After sampling, after killing, mutate, adapt. And in the book, they all leave these giant pyramids behind. And the pyramids are kind of like a instinctive nest egg of the coup. So for a few million years after their departure, they actually survey the world. They keep looking after it. And if evolution rises again, they quash it. They nip it in the bud. That was my idea. Is what we saw in your book a representation of what the coup look like, or a modified servant? We don't know, because in the book they also use these genetically modified machines and things. So I mean, they are like ants. If a human could be compared to a god, am I being clear here? They are like a god's version of an ant, really not an individual, as we know. They have reflexes which are basic, but they're basic compared to a god, which is still incomprehensibly more sophisticated than our ideas, which is just a whole big kerfuffle. What's their religion of being gods? I think I explained this in their reflex. They have some fascinating and horrendously terrifying ceremonies. I bet you, I don't know, but possibly. And then McCall says, I'm eating a banana, by the way. He says, I heard somewhere a while ago you wanted to do revamp a lot of All Tomorrows. Yes, I do. Look, All Tomorrows I did in 2005. I was 21. When I look back at it, it's kind of, I mean, you all probably like it, but some parts I can't read without cringing. The art seems weird, but seems surprisingly suitable. I want to rewrite the whole book at some point, but not in the immediate future because there's still Snaiad to cover. And I think the late Mr. Olaf Stapledon already did a fantastic future history with his Afterman. No, that's not him. Star Maker, sorry. Yes, Star Maker is an amazing future human history. So I'll go back to all tomorrows later. But thanks, guys. Thanks for all the interest and thanks for the cool fan club. I didn't know there was such an enthusiasm in them. I spent lots of time enjoying stories and pictures in my mind. So much of All Tomorrows and Snaiad and all your work in general. And if you let some things intentionally ambiguous, I understand that I actually really like that. I think that's what I did, and thank you. At the same time, I'd like to hear about what you imagined. Thanks, and I wish you well in all your endeavors. Well, thanks. Thanks, Kay. Again, this is the most precious thing. A fan's devotion and their love and interest. And I can't or won't answer all the questions, but I hope you like the answers I've provided. Okay, moving on. One more question. Dave Ramer says, off-topic question. What do you think about the Saw films? Is the mechanical aspect of the traps appealing to you? What I liked most about Saw was the movie because it feels like something totally badass is happening all the time, every time, and there's no goddamn stopping it. Jigsaw, he wants to play a game with you, and he's got so look, all I can say about this, I already told you, I'm not a huge fan of bloody films. I don't like movies in which characters die or there's blood. I think there's enough of that in our lives already. That being said, Saw has some very poignant memories for me because I saw it in Ankara years ago, 2003 or 2 or 4, whatever. It was a different time and our country was a different country and we were different people. We were younger, more optimistic. So it was with a whole bunch of friends in Ankara in the Kavaklıdere Film Theater, which this won't mean much to you guys, I guess. Look, Turkey has 2 cities. Istanbul, the big, really crowded one, Anus Mundi, and Ankara, the cozier, smaller, and in my opinion, the cooler one, because I'm from there and I had some really sweet memories back there. This Kavaklıdere cinema was like just on High Street and it was very cozy and it had a kind of Art Deco 1930s 50s vibe to it. We also saw and we were so like shocked. It was a nice time with our friends. That life doesn't exist anymore. Or everybody there is married or kind of got knocked up with children, or they're like, oh, let's all our kids play together, man, because they're in this kind of adult rush. Which is okay, I think. I respect everyone's life choices, but I cannot go without observing that some of those choices were taken without much thought. But anyways, who am I to judge? So yeah, everybody matured, got married, myself included, had kids. I didn't, thank heavens. So yeah, that cinema, which was so nice and beautiful. I mean, back then the internet wasn't a thing, And you would go there and you would meet your friends as if it's real life Facebook, you know? That cinema is now a cheap shoe store. And in the ticket book, these... Look, I'll be politically incorrect. These goddamn peasants who took over the place line up their stupid porn star shoes in the ticket book and in the ticket booth, and it's just been destroyed. So yeah, from Saw to whatever. Yeah, but more on the movie itself. Yeah, it has some ingenious traps or something, but you see, none of it disturbs you as much as a real case of violence would. Like in Saw, there's some sort of a poetic justice. If someone is killed in this horrible trap because they did something wrong in their lives, or like, I mean, it's really gory and extreme and baroque, but ultimately the axioms of ethics and justice that operated are pretty vanilla, actually. If now a really fucking disturbing film would have senseless violence directed towards women, children, whatever. And there are films like that, and I don't like them at all. It's Funny Games by this not stupid, but provocative director. Who was the director of Funny Games? Anyways, that's a really harrowing film. I think much more scarier than any Saw series, because just completely innocent people are getting killed, and when you're watching it, your blood boils, and you want to go up to the director and punch his fucking teeth in, you know? So yeah, I think there's a tribal and young adult motivation behind these films like Saw, which you go to see and you try to impress your mates. Haha, I wasn't scared, whatever, which is all cool. It's a part of our popular culture life cycle, but they don't do much for me. I don't like violence. How many times have I said this? But thanks, Dave Rammer. You opened this amazing gate into this Pandora's box of nostalgia and Ankara. God, Ankara. I'll never forget. Carnotaurus sastrei, who is probably not his real name because that's the name of a meat-eating dinosaur, says, hello, what's your feeling pertaining to the plausibility of the Basart ramjet and the proton-proton fusion as whole? Also, how do you feel a megafauna ecosystem based off ecdysozoa such as tardigrades, arthropods and velvet worms might develop in an environment with a large enough oxygen capacity? Have a great day. Hope the flu subsides. Thanks, Carnotaurus, from South America of a millions of years ago. Okay, let's get these things sorted. Basart ramjet is a kind of hypothetical space drive that was meant to collect interstellar hydrogen and use it as a propellant. Basically, it's a interstellar power drive without a fuel problem. But the latest data all indicates that Basart ramjets are not really plausible. You need something with the masses of several suns or several black holes to harvest interstellar hydrogen at those densities, and when you have a gravitational attractor that's that big, that power won't move it, so you're stuck in Einstein's universe still. About tardigrades, look, tardigrades are the water bears. They're usually popularized as these immortal animals because they're very resistant to desiccation, radiation, things like this. And I don't know how they would evolve. I mean, imagine you have a kind of biosphere with plants and water and oxygen, and somehow you drop a few tardigrades down there. Tardigrades may be distant relatives of arachnids, actually. Or that's one of the many analyses that came out in recent decades. So if they found themselves in such an environment, first they would be like mites among the moss. They would, I think, explode into a profusion of aquatic forms. Then they would start to get larger, like wood lice or, I don't know, tiny crayfish or whatever. So ultimately you would get a planet full of insect-like things at the end of the day, and many forms which we see in the insect or arachnid world. The sea scorpion, the dragonfly, the trilobite would be echoed if not replicated. And if there's no other animals, maybe some of them could develop an internal skeleton. But remember, there's no drive to produce big land animals in evolution. I mean, it was just luck that internal bones developed in some sort of proto-fish, and things went on from there. Maybe exoskeletal animals could produce these internal bone-like structures, which means bigger things, whatever. But also maybe there could be completely novel solutions to the size problem. Perhaps, I don't know, instead of shedding the skeleton outwards, they would absorb it, so you would have some sort of tissue that's like bark or tree trunks, but flexible at certain places. Who knows? Certainly a good idea to consider. More questions. Dabmain says, what did you think about the movie Arrival? I think it was a great movie. I think it was a big relief from the classical trope of like alien invasion films. It was very Clarkian, like something Arthur Clarke would write. There was really nothing to dislike about it. I mean, yeah, I had some difficulty buying the whole circular thought leads you to mental time travel back in time or something. And there was a kind of... Look, I'm not a member of the politically correct brigade, but still I would say there was a kind of stereotyping with the Chinese characters by having them as the instigators of global war. Whereas in historical times, Chinese people and Chinese civilization has been surprisingly introverted. I mean, I don't know if this applies to present-day China. Obviously, you guys can answer it themselves. But China used to build these enormous treasure fleets at the time of Columbus, but for some reason they never used it to conquer or explore the Americas or the rest of the world. They could have. In any given alien arrival scenario, it would be more likely for America or part of the Western world to be the violent side than the Chinese. And I'm not saying this because America is imperialist or whatever, but it's just historically it's been what the Western civilization has done. I really don't know. Probably if such a thing happened, the world would unanimously take a decision to bomb the aliens, because it's a human trait. If we have more to lose by not launching the nukes, I think we would launch the nukes. I don't know. About Arrival, the aliens were also really well designed, and the cinematography was very good, and editing. I mean, for once we didn't have a screaming alien, and you really didn't know what to make of these creatures when you first saw them, which I think was very realistic. Another bad guy there was the kind of Alex Jones type conspiracy theorist Marine. I don't know how realistic that is either. I mean, I don't know. Look, there's this tropes. It's kind of like army bad, feminine intuition good, but usually male and female members of our species have violence and intuition equally distributed, and it's a Hollywood trope to pass them between different genders and different character stereotypes. That's all I'm saying. Trilobite says, welcome back to YouTube. Sorry for not being a more regular commenter. No problem, man. I was wondering if you think there could be any way for a tetrapod to evolve another set of limbs, like maybe muscular extensions of spikes on the back or size becoming more advanced. It's an interesting question. How could you have 6 or more limbs from a 4-limbed, backboned vertebrate ancestor? One way could be to divide the hands. Chameleons do this to an extent. The hands are divided into 2 palms, and if by some freak evolution the arm and the forearm were reduced and only the 2 palms remained, and then the fingers extended again, you could have more limb-like things in some way. And then also you could have muscular extensions, and caterpillars do this in insects. So they have 6 regular legs, and at the back of their body they have any number of fleshy sucker feet. But I don't know how a vertebrate creature would evolve them. Maybe a kind of snake, but then you would already have 0. So, I mean, perhaps from the face, from a trunk, I could definitely see, if not legs, arm-like appendages evolving. And this has been the subject of that popular speculative evolution project, one of the first actually, the rhinogrades, which has animals that have legs or limbs coming from their noses, because that's just how they roll. Okay, Ted the zoologist says, whatever happened to Snaiad? It hasn't been updated since 2014, and I feel really sad about that. Really sorry, man, but I think I answered this question. It's coming back in the future as a book. Ankrizov says, this is more of a question about All Tomorrows, my gateway drug to your amazing world. Thanks, man, keep passing the good stuff. Okay, but I noticed that in that book that you gave the post-human thoughts and emotions that weren't outside the spectrum of human emotions. I was wondering if you think that there are other ways of thinking besides us. And in a scenario like the one shown in All Tomorrows, do you think human archetypes would survive or re-emerge? Or do you think wholly unique post-human archetypes would appear? I'm asking this because I have my own world building project, which is somewhat similar to All Tomorrows, and I've been grappling with this question. Okay, this is a great question and a great comment. Thank you so much, man. And in fact, your comment is one of my major gripes. Remember how I said I have some cringe moments with All Tomorrows? It's mostly because of that human forcing. And I think in the future, or if we had massively regressed creatures, these would act and think in thoughts that would be very alien to what we feel. But I think ultimately there would be things like something like love, something like attachment to a group or an individual or to an idea, I don't know. But even look, I think this was one of my biggest errors, that the notion of individuality is far more common. Whereas even in human societies, the notion of the individual as a kind of main thing of society was quite rare. I mean, even today, you have all these cultures in which are really oppressive to our modern mind, because their focus is not on the human individual or his wishes and desires. So yeah, so much variation in present-day humans already. I think there would be much more in post-human species. All I can say is that for your book, really go wild and try to think in terms that one wouldn't consider today, And especially it's really interesting if you consider ways of thinking which are so wrong to us today in the Western world, but have certain atavistic and genetic bases that may resurface again in the future. Okay, so there. And he says, thank you for gracing this world with your wacky, brilliant imagination. Once again, this makes my day. Thanks, guys, really. I mean, I know I'm doing something right whenever I hear comments and accolades like this. Sebastian says, if there were to be a film or a TV adaptation of Snaiad or All Tomorrows, how would you like it to be presented? Wow. Really good. I think it would be in a kind of series format, because the scopes of both stories are so long that a movie can't do them justice. Maybe one of the highlight events could be a film of its own. I don't know. I mean, for a film or TV project, you need characters and stories, and so I don't know. For all tomorrows, it could be the story of one family across 1 billion years, and somehow they survive, and it's just their stories and convolutions. That would be interesting to see. For Snaiad, I certainly think the challenges of colonizing an alien planet and facing all these alien creatures would be an amazing thing. Certainly, I mean, in the Snaiad story, people go to this planet in a sleeping ship. They wake up, and just to get a population boost, they have this thing where they massively clone children from tanks. So basically 40 or 50 years are just spent raising the first generation with kind of android helpers and whatever. So the first generation that does this makes themselves immortal so that they can take care of everything. But this creates a power problem, because these immortal elites are now ruling the planet, and of course the kids are growing up. They reproduce normally and have normal kids, but they have a finite lifespan. So how do you justify that? You know, it results in certain stresses. And in the story, there was a kind of extreme green ethos dominant among the colonists, and they want to avoid the mistakes of Earth, but one rogue character, himself an immortal, says, no, what are you saying? Why are you playing greenies here? We shouldn't colonize this world heavily, but build starships, because now we're all immortal. We have all these amazing nanotechs. We could make people. We belong to the stars, he says. You know, we are godlike people. It's humiliating to ourselves and to our children to sit here and limit our technological possibilities. Just let's move on to other worlds and let's become interstellar entities, he says. To which the green elite of Snaiad says, no, we can't repeat the mistakes of Earth again. We don't know what's out there. Maybe there's a dangerous alien empire in the next planet. So it results in a small civil war, because the dissenting guy finds a little city of it himself, and he forces the development of nanotechnology to such a degree that they have a clear advantage on the greenies. So begrudgingly, the green faction has to nuke him, and he's killed, or we think. And then they have to limit the technology, so they become this kind of silent elite of this world. And then there's a rebellion of children down the line or something. Good stories. So the animals are only part of the backdrop. That's interesting. If you want to write something about this, please be my guest. Okay. Khazad says, one question I need to know the answer is why you had weird flashes of random things in your old videos. Yes, I had this. The answer was given in the previous open question time. And then Khazad says, actually, don't worry, mate. I rewatched all your old videos and now I remember. Thanks, man. Watch the older open question time to find out the answer to this one, because it's a funny thing. Another question by Mega Bass. Okay, it says, my question would be, to what degree do you think speculation, wild or otherwise, should be presented to the general public when dealing with extinct animals through documentaries, books, etc.? And obviously this is in the light of all yesterday's, our book on dinosaurs and the new look at dinosaurs. Short answer to this question, a lot. I think, look, you're just repeating yourself when you're describing dinosaurs the way any other documentary did it. So you should be as speculative as you should. Maybe err a bit on the wrong side. Who cares? You would at least have said and shown some very interesting things, especially if this is a visually oriented documentary or film or something. So there, Mega Bass. So I hope this was a good enough answer. Everyone should, speculation is not only a legit but also a necessary part of paleo communication in this day and age. Come on, what year is it? 1996? Okay. Natalia Dino Drover says, I want to know your thoughts about how could be a dinosaur civilization, or how would a sentient dinosaur be? I think I presented something about this in my dinosauroid concept a few years back. So if you Google dinosauroids, Kosemen, and also with my good friend Simon Roy, we had a lot of comics and sketchy exercises about a civilization of intelligent dinosaurs. And look up Simon Roy, intelligent dinosaurs, look up Kosemen, intelligent dinosaurs, and you would really see a lot of insights on what would constitute an answer to your question. Okay, Daniel Tartisana says, are you still open to new creatures from Snaiad? Yes, please design and send me all and any Snaiad creatures you might be inspired to draw. I will canonize those which I think fit in the general theme. But even if these aren't canon, it's good to have this kind of Snaiad legends, kind of non-canon creatures. They expand everybody's horizons. So please, Daniel, go ahead. Also, I would love to see what a tetradactyl looks like. These are archaic animals with more fingers on Snaiad, because most developed animals have 2 fingers and toes. I want to design a Snaiad creature that starts as a wormish thing, then goes on to a cocoon and has a different morphs. Go for it. Have a field day, man. Snaiad is the best. He says, thanks, Daniel. You are the best for making Snaiad the best. By the way, I have to admit, I'm accompanied in this interview by a couple of extremely beautiful ladies. Please give a heads up for Ece and Didem, who are with me on this momentous occasion, and for the past hour they've been tolerating my babble. Do you want to say hi to CM Kosemen listeners? The last time I counted, there was 9 million of them. Here's Didem.
I'm still not used to calling yourself CM Kosemen. That is Kosemen in Turkish, by the way, not Kosemen.
Point well taken. Look, in my defense, I'm only repeating the way my foreign friends have been calling me. But anyways, thanks. And do you want to add? Our second guest is quite shy, so I'll leave it at that. But yeah, we're bowling right here in CM Kosemen studios. Anyways, no, I'm kidding. I have my virtual friends and I have my real friends, and I'm thankful for you all. Okay, moving on. Danger Floof says, what's your favorite creature from the Snaiad project? Good question. It's the Volugnat. It's the big predatory dinosaur-like retro type creature from this giant island continent, and it's got this yellow body and this hatchet-like head and everything, and it's a really bizarre beast. I mean, it's actually my homage on these old outdated dinosaur illustrations, and it's meant to look like one, but I think that's my favorite creature. Okay. Gray Stamback asks, will the Snaiad book include creatures that aren't on the present site? Yes, a lot of them, and not just the hidden ones. And if you're a true Snaiad fans, you will know what the hidden ones are. Have you ever considered doing some realistic Pokemon artwork? They would look cool in your style. Thanks, Gray. Look, Pokemon, I think, is a great game. I think it's drawn thousands of people into nature studies and just to a general appreciation of life and diversity in particular. That being said, I've never been into the whole realistic Pokemon thing, but there are a lot of good artists who do these. I don't think I would be one to draw them. No disrespect here, but yeah, you could perhaps have Pokemonized versions of my creatures. That's a contest that's open to everyone now, and I would love to see them. Let's have a Pokemonized Asteromorph god from All Tomorrows. Or let's have a Pokemonized Snaiad creature. Kahidron uses Bide. It's super effective. That kind of thing. Okay. Daniel Tartisana returns. Man, you really know how to please your fans even with the flu. Feel better, man. I have so many questions, but I'll keep in mind that I can always save them for the future. And then he asks, who would win? King Kong versus Godzilla, any era of your choice. No contest here, Godzilla would win because it has radioactive breath. 2. Who would win? A C-Rex, that's a Seismopus kurash, a predatory animal from Snaiad, and the T-Rex from the world. Oh, are we really doing this? I mean, look, it's very popular on this, especially one notorious forum called Carnivora forums, where users endlessly dispute which prehistoric animal would win. I don't like these battles. I don't like this gladiatorial instinct in appreciating nature, history, or sci-fi. So for the question, I'll say a C-Rex, a Seismopus, has a big mouth on its chest, a very thin swan-like head. So its body isn't very mobile, but it's got pretty strong teeth and a bite. The answer is whoever gets to bite first. If the Snaiad Rex gets to strike the body of the T-Rex, it would win. If the T-Rex bites off the Snaiad animal's swan-like head, it would win. But I don't really care much for these kind of death matches. Daniel goes on to ask, do you have a favorite creature race illustration that you have created from all your projects? I personally love, he says, the mystery of the coup and the story of the asteromorphic gods. I like them too. All your work is inspiring. Thanks for coming back to YouTube. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for listening. Thanks to all of you. Look, my favorite would have to be a contest between the Volugnat creature I described earlier from Snaiad and I don't know, the modular people from All Yesterdays. I think those two are my favorites, and for not many particular reasons. But I think I like them all. And what are your favorites? You guys tell me, because that's a more exciting question. Okay, more comments. David Padin Sancho says, when did you start to draw your magnificent demons? Okay, this question I will answer later in a specific video, because I have something in the pipeline about this. Basically, I started those paintings in 2010, and I've been doing them and have been creating this artistic career around them for nearly 7 years now. And then finally, the dubstep addict says, what's your favorite pterosaur? This is a very nice and naive question. Pterosaurs, as always, as anyone knows, are these flying reptiles. I think my favorite would be one of the earlier ones, Priondactylus or Ostriodactylus or Eudimorphodon or Dimorphodon. Because the later ones are extremely derived and bizarre and godlike, if you will. But those earliest ones, they would still betray a sense of their ancestry. And they would still be a bit wonky and with these all strange crests and teeth. And that's something I would really like to see. Okay. This was it, believe it or not. My throat has gone sore again in this recording, but it was an immense pleasure. Thanks to all of you for listening and asking and commenting. And thanks to my two caryatids, Didem and Ece. Once again, it's CM Kosemen eating some wraps, signing off. Have a nice evening. Din 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 danana 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 danana